Yeah, and welcome back. If you were not on a few minutes ago online, I'm Dave Whelan, really excited to be here. Marty, thanks for the opportunity. Divya and I did Healthcare 2023, and I've done Healthcare 2024, so no surprise. Welcome to Healthcare 2025. But really excited to be talking about some of the trends we're seeing. And what I love about JP Morgan Week is that we bring together in the city of San Francisco some tremendous thinkers, but more importantly, doers and connectors who are basically helping to define what's happening over the next year. And we've had some ups and downs years, and we've had some big societal issues that we talked about in the last panel, including pandemic. And so seeing lots of positivity, but I'm looking forward to hearing from the panelists about what they're looking for from a tech trend standpoint and a financial trend standpoint. And so we'll kick it off. Divya, just spend a few minutes and tell us who you are, what you're doing. I know you've had some evolutions over the past couple of years, and then we'll dig into more about your background and what you're working on.
So Divya Yerraguntla, I'm head of go-to-market for Treehill Partners. It's a transaction advisory firm. We do a lot of product development and corporate development work. Pure play healthcare. I've been in healthcare for about 26 years, mostly late stage commercialization and business development, corporate development background. Very excited to be here. As Dave said, it's been like trends year over year. So we've kind of very in tune with each other and our
Go
views.
back and see what did we say 2 years ago? But
So no, this is going to be a great session. So thank you for having me here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Matt, please say hello, who you are and how you got here.
Hi, everyone.
I think you
just tap that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Oguz. I run Venture Science, which is our family office-backed investment firm. I'm in charge of two things. One is our direct investments in tech and life sciences as well. Those are all of our private investments. And then two is our equity capital markets participation in the public markets. And those are typically IPOs. We're located here in the San Francisco Bay Area, just across the street, across the bridge in Sausalito. I've been doing this job for the last, I think this is our 13th year now, investing in private transactions, venture-backed companies. We've co-invested with many of the firms here in town, and fifth year in participating in equity capital markets. So I can talk a little bit about what we're seeing, what themes that we're investing in this year, and maybe if anybody's interested, maybe the IPO outlook, which we're all sort of anxiously waiting at this time.
Excellent. Definitely want to be talking about that. And then Chris, I know you wear multiple hats, so give us a little sense of a few of those, especially what you're working on with QuantumCyte.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm the CEO of an operating business called QuantumCyte, and in terms of I'm really a product guy, an engineer. So we do cellular enrichment, and so when someone has cancer and they want to get screened for access to therapeutics, they'll do genetic testing. That process has some inefficiencies that create some contaminated data as part of the genetic testing process. So we've invented a better way to do genetic testing, and it works for whole genome sequencing. It works for DNA, RNA, it works for proteomics. So we're working with Merck in Singapore and New Jersey. We're working with Roche. We're working with Mayo Clinic. We're working with a New York hospital group. Several of the people I just mentioned have already invested in the company. So we're in the middle of a safe node. So if anybody's interested, just let us know. And our mission is really to fix the way people receive cancer treatment through enhanced screening. And many of the people that we mentioned are already investors. So thank you for your time today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we're going to stick with you for a moment, Chris. And you are on stage looking for capital. We'll get to that in a minute with your company, but just kind of over the past few years, tell us what you've been seeing out there. Call this broad trends, whether it's QuantumCyte directed or not.
Sure, yeah. So people today talk a lot about where the world is going from an investment side. So in the world of cancer care, we're seeing precision medicine being front and center. So when you can be any part of getting the right therapeutics to patients, that's important. We're seeing all the economics are being driven by biopharma companies. So you can implement cellular enrichment at a company that does 100,000 samples of genetic screening per year, and they'll make an extra $15 million. At the same time, the biopharma company you're working with will make an extra $650 million on the exact same project. So we're tying together a lot of the economics that flow through the value chain between big pharma companies that are providing a lot of the therapies, the large-scale testing labs that are doing a lot of the work, and then the pathologists and physicians who are screening patients and getting them the right care. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So Matt, a little bigger picture, what do you see as sort of the transformative technologies that you will be investing in, or at least looking to invest in over the next few years?
Yeah, so we started investing here in deep tech, meaning companies that use deep computation in creating their products. So we've been doing that for a while now here in Silicon Valley. And so we're fortunate that we've seen a lot. And we've been involved in companies who create quantum computing platforms like Quantum, PSI Quantum, which just received 1 billion Australian dollars in non-dilutive funding from Australia, and then consecutively $500 million from the state of Illinois. So the element of not just artificial intelligence, but quantum computing, so these deep tech enablers are now becoming more and more predominant. Actually, PsiQuantum just released an update, and they're working with Boehringer Ingelheim on very exciting work. So going forward, we're looking at 5 key industries that we believe that would benefit tremendously from quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and robotics. And those are, number one, space tech. So we've been investing in space tech for quite some time now as well. Number 2 is life sciences, healthcare, longevity. I mean, I know the term longevity it's typically not been too welcome in the life sciences world, but we live not too far from the Buck Institute up in Novato in Marin County, and there's fantastic research happening there right now. The third one is advanced materials and material science. The fourth one is going to be water, food waste. We've been investing in food tech for some time, ag tech. We've invested in 2 companies. One of them is Plenty. I think it's the predominant indoor farming company, and the other one is Eat Just. Some of you guys may have seen the Just Egg product, and they have some other products as well. And lastly, of course, energy and climate. We are closely looking at small fission type nuclear reactor builders, and it's very exciting to see that down in the Southern California, Hawthorne area. People who worked at SpaceX for a long time are now leaving, and they're creating these really exciting companies. And these are the people who are behind building everything that SpaceX is today. And one of them is actually these nuclear platforms. So all of these, but on the top layer would be quantum computing and AI. So when we look at a company and they're saying, well, we use AI for such and such in healthcare, we take a closer and deeper look. We actually request how much they've been spending on that. Have they bought any GPUs and where they bought it from? And so we can see whether it's true artificial intelligence and sub subcategories of AI as well, from large language models to machine learning to image recognition. And there's a bunch of other areas that you can use today, as well as, quantum computing. So these are the things that we're going to look this year, which we started looking at last year, and we've made a handful of investments. And I think these will continue throughout these will continue over the next 10 years. And today we're in about 15 companies who are at, what's called unicorn status. And we're really ready for them to sort of go public. And we've been in a really long drought as far as these liquidity events are concerned. But we continue making our investments, and we even sort of started making more and more earlier stage bets because we think there is greater opportunity there. So
excellent. We'll come back to the liquidity, but a couple points. One, love that AI data angle, but I think what's really interesting is that all 5 of your investment areas are or can be very much driven by biotech innovation and synthetic biology, biotech innovation, and so there's a lot of commonality there. Beyond.
Yeah, I mean, biology. I mean, obviously, space. When you go out to space, it's microgravity or no gravity environment. There's biology work going there, but a company that, for example, we invested in a company that's building a cislunar transport network, and this is essentially between the Earth and the Moon. Transportation of satellites from one place to another. And if you guys want to really geek out, there's a really nice and long White House cislunar initiative document, which I think came out last year. So that's everything between the Earth and the Moon and on the surface of the Moon. So so that transport network is obviously very different than the biotechnology work or anything else that goes on maybe inside one of those satellites.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah, that's great. And then just one follow on. I like that you mentioned longevity, and Marty just left the room. But so I think we should do a longevity themed panel on one of the next ones. So I'm gonna work on that one.
Speaking of longevity, I've known Marty for a long time. This conference certainly has the longevity. If anything, it's this conference has longevity.
Absolutely love it. So Divya, same question. Sort of what. Not just what are you looking for from an investment standpoint, but what do you see as being truly transformative over the coming years where you want to focus from a Treehill standpoint?
So again, I kind of agree with both Chris and Matt. It's definitely a lot of technology aspects, a lot of personalization, because now we have better tools to diagnose. We can really get to the gene level and see how each of the patients can respond to a certain drug, a certain therapy, which has really opened up the arena of personalized medicine, which is affordable. It's not that it wasn't there, it just wasn't affordable. So I think over the years that will come down. The other aspect, as you said, AI, right? Just so much happening in that space. So there's a lot of drug discovery work that was happening. One of the biggest hurdles I think we had until now, we had no regulations. Healthcare is like highly regulated environment, as we all know. So without a specific regulation in place, it's always very hard. It's a gray area to decide whether you can do it a certain way or not do it a certain way. And then it's just too expensive to wait until it goes to FDA to realize it's not the right way. So they just released a draft guidance of how to use AI in drug discovery last week, which I think is a great step forward. This was done by Europe last year in May. And it took us a while, but we're there. So at least there are some guidelines coming out. There is some work happening, which kind of gives us the hope that all of this adaptation into different aspects of healthcare will be a little bit easier and simpler given where we are. One other area which we see a lot is the ancillary operational efficiencies, right? Everything at the end of the day helps the patient. So even if we can cut some of, and one great example is just preparing an IND, right? Or just an NDA filing for a drug usually takes 3 to 6 months because you have to prepare all of the data. You're looking and you don't get the data until the last minute. Database lock happens and you're scrambling, right? And you have these experts who are super expensive and you're trying to pull this together. Now with AI, we are able to crunch that time down. Like literally a week, 2 weeks, you have 80% of the draft prepared in the right format. So you can literally send it down the gateway. which is a huge help. So now you're engaging the experts at the last mile level, right? Instead of them doing or somebody else doing it and them double checking if that's done right or not. We still need human in the loop, but the time that the human needs to spend is low. And one thing we have to realize is it's not just the 3 months cut down in NDA preparation. It's the 3 months at the end of your patent, which is millions of dollars a day.
Right.
So you're maximizing your asset to that point, and you're getting the drug earlier to patients, which is at the end of the day, we are all outcomes based, right? Companies, we all want to see patient benefit. So I think there are multiple ways that technology is helping. One thing I would say, when we talk about technology, we do talk a lot about, LLMs, because 60% of the data generated is actually healthcare related. And there was another quote somewhere saying that with all the personalized data we're generating through our smartphones, smartwatches, each one of us will be generating about 3 trillion data bytes, right? Each of us, just through our machines.
That's like that. What is that?
In a lifetime. In a lifetime. And we are a lot of people on this earth. That's a lot of data.
Yeah.
So how are we going to really use that data? Data generation by itself means nothing unless we're using it to some good. And I think now with all of the computing power, everything, we have the chance to do it. We can't use LLMs all the time. They're super expensive. But I think that's where quantum computing, edge computing, those things come into account. Companies that are just trying to use edge computing and just make minimal calls to your large language models kind of reduces the cost. So there is a lot that we can do, and the trend is more and more, how is technology helping healthcare and how are we utilizing what we have at hand? AI is a very big hammer. Are we using it to hit the right nails? So understanding which nails will get us the most impact, I think, is the key here right now.
Perfect. Thank you. So, definitely a lot of common themes here. And so, especially around data, AI. Chris, you've heard what Matt and Divya had to say. So, how would you pitch Matt and Divya around QuantumCyte?
Oh boy. Well, it started when I was a child.
This is the longevity theme coming back.
Yeah, I think the simplest thing about our platform is we do actually use AI for our platform, but it's not central or core to our business. So if you look at proteomics, the study of proteins, or DNA, RNA, whole genome sequencing, they all require some kind of very good tissue biopsy if you're doing biopsies. And our platform is able to mask off the non-relevant tissue, so the non-cancer tissue, and allows you to utilize and extract purified cancer cells. You then send those out for sequencing, and the entire signal gets better. So you're getting more variant allele frequencies. You're getting better access to biomarkers, either individual biomarkers or clusters of biomarkers. And then the AI allows you to align those with therapeutics and clinical results. So it's on trend for precision medicine. It's on trend for the economics that biopharma is driving through our healthcare system. And it works well with AI and machine learning.
Awesome. Yeah, Matt, Divya, just love any thoughts on that? How does that fit, or might that fit with what you're doing?
I mean, obviously, I'm not too familiar with the company, the idea or the premise, not having looked into it in greater depth. But I agree with Divya. I mean, there's a lot of data out there, and the tools are available, the hammer's out there. And so, we're interested in companies that are inherently using these tools every day on the forefront to get to the target. I mean, healthcare companies have been laggard over the last maybe 10, 20 years, both in terms of there's been some breakthrough drugs, but other than the MRI, the CT scans and so forth, there hadn't been really major breakthroughs, and that's not because people aren't working on it. In fact, I believe more and more smart people with PhDs. If you guys ever take a trip down to Palo Alto, Stanford University, it's building after building after building. People in there working, trying to figure out answers to tough problems, tough diseases, Alzheimer's, certain tough to address cancers. And so hopefully now with these newer technologies, we will get to those targets faster. I think people are ready to take more risk with these companies, to invest more money, more capital. I think corp VCs are going to do a good job. And speaking with highly qualified folks throughout this week, MD, PhDs of some of the best schools in the world, if we can't get to certain solutions in the next 5 to 10 years, then this is really, really a tough spot for all of us to be, because as we know, all of our families have gone through the dementia and the cancers and things like that. So now is the time to hopefully gain momentum, progress. So I commend, of course, my colleague Chris here on the work that they're doing. And as investors, we're ready to take some chances on that.
And coming from the pharma side, right, I can say this. We have really lagged in terms of adoption of technology, of innovation. Like a lot of it has happened. And it's not that technology is new to healthcare. We have been engaging with technology way back when, right? So I think COVID kind of really expedited all of this, opened up minds to
Momentarily, at least, right?
Yeah, exactly. At least I know I've worked in some companies where we could not take data out of some machines for whatever reason, for confidentiality. But with COVID, we were given options. They were options. We just didn't look hard enough. But we were able to find options. When push comes to shove, suddenly we were able to work from home with a firewall and everything. So sometimes, you have to be pushed to the wall to get some things out. And I think COVID did that for us. And now things have moved much faster. We're looking at technology in a different way. We're looking at all of the innovation in a different way. FDA is starting to look at a lot of the guidelines in a different way, which was not the case 4 or 5 years ago. And I think that has really moved the needle forward. So now we just need to look at what's going to be the mover of that needle, the fastest with the most impact. And I think we have a lot of technology at our hand, and really good technologists. As you were saying, SpaceX engineers, everybody's trying to come out and say, what can I do in healthcare space? Because that's important now for everybody. It's forefront, right? In the forefront. So I think now is the time where we have the domain experts step up and help them find the meaningful problems to solve, because they can solve a lot of problems. But what's going to really help us move that needle? If we can step up and help them there's a great way to collaborate.
Yeah, and I guess just staying on that, because you mentioned the slowness of adoption or resistance to adoption. Call it in life sciences, sort of the innovation side of things. I think we see that even more in the delivery of healthcare. So in the medical world, to some extent, we're stuck with clipboards and fax machines and data sitting in filing cabinets. So even if we're innovating on that research side, the tech side, how do we bring that into the actual clinical environment?
So that's a great question. And I was doing a fireside chat today morning.
And I did not see that. So
exactly
we weren't cued in on that.
I know, great segue. But the one thing, yes, I was talking to the systems VP from Common Spirit Health. So they have a lot of hospital system, and we were talking about how are they using AI, and some of the examples that were given were just, we don't realize how much they're starting to adopt, how much they're starting to use it. And then once you realize and once you get all these examples, we're like, wow, this is what we've been talking about, that why are they not using it this way? And now we see that adoption happening in real life, in real world. And people realize the only thing we right now see is when you go into doctor's office, they ask you, can I try transcribe? And then 5 minutes later, they have all the notes, right? Otherwise, you didn't even look into your physician's eyes because they were writing down, furiously the notes. Now you actually get to see the color of the eye of your physician, which is great. But, those things, small steps we see, but there are a lot of other things in the background that are happening. And we were talking about these concentric circles of, how from operational efficiency standpoint, you're getting closer and closer to the clinical aspect of how to use AI. So there is a relation and how it's actually coming closer and also outwards.
And I just say, because I own a medical practice and my partner's a doctor, that the whole way the AI developed along the diagnosing part was that for years they had a group of Indian doctors and medical students listening in on your conversations, and they were adding in diagnostic notes to it as well. And then over the years that became AI, And now it actually is diagnosing at the same time as the doctor is doing the interview. And,
They
and
ask
it'll,
follow-up
it'll,
questions.
and it'll make recommendations on what you should be giving people, the dosage, et cetera, et cetera. It's really phenomenal how fast it works.
Yeah,
So,
really,
And
really.
to Marty's point, you're avoiding a follow-up visit again because you're actually getting real-time next question. Have you thought about this? Have you asked this? Do you want to ask this patient this specific question? So you're gathering the data in the same visit, which also helps the health systems. It helps the insurance companies because you're not again getting billed for a second visit, a follow-on. So I think it's like overall a lot of efficiency gains. If you
Yeah,
start
well,
looking
it
at
also is very specific on the language that you're using on your diagnosis.
exactly.
So you may have like the common cold or a flu, but it'll go and help you define exactly what flu you have, and then it'll give you a series of treatments alongside it. And a lot of times it might be a treatment a doctor hadn't thought of, or it might be a dosage that they hadn't thought of. So
Yeah, and theoretically, each of those interactions, the patient-physician interaction, are being fed back into the same models. So we're continuing to refine those in real time, day by day, as opposed to waiting until somebody sees a trend, publishes an article, which somebody else sees, and eventually it becomes a new standard of care. So this really helps in terms of faster implementation and improvement, I hope.
It does. And it's also kind of going back to connected health, and we are connecting all these data points that we are collecting, right? So now you have something to talk with your physician as well, because they're saying, are you monitoring your sleep? And you know what? In fact, I am, because I have this smartwatch.
Right.
So this is what I have found. So it kind of adds to the richness of that discussion and final diagnosis.
Right. So Chris, back to you. As we think about, we're talking about the this clinical side of things. How do you see QuantumCyte potentially being adopted in that? And are you building sort of the pitch to not just pitch to investors, but the pitch to physicians, the pitch to these test organizations to utilize this technology?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So in terms of accelerating this into the clinical side, so one of our investors has included us into a large patient population. It's around 3 million patients. And they're going to be using our enrichment platform to improve the economics by doing early genetic screening of patients who would not normally get that. So the idea there is that if you do early VAF genetic screening for access to therapeutics, that those patients would do better and the therapy would cost less. I think that's going to accelerate that care for a lot of patients. I think if you're going from so that's the insurance side. On the big pharma side, it's really access to existing FDA-approved therapeutics, because there's a lot of economics around those. And then on the clinical testing side, like the Mayo Clinics of the world and the LabCorp and the Quest, it's really about automation, so automating those processes, and then tying into the new AI platforms like digital pathology, where you're not trying to eliminate the pathologist, but you're trying to enhance the pathologist for certain decisions around diagnosis that can be done without the use of an actual MD, PhD. So those are the three trends that I see that can help accelerate this into the market.
Excellent. Thank you. Matt, continuing to talk data, and you knew I was going to dig into this, but I like your kind of quote mantra of math trumps heuristics, and so talk to us about what that means, both in healthcare, what that means in investment into healthcare.
I mean, what that means is it's something that I said in reference to how decisions were made in making venture investments, and how I thought decisions ought to be made. In many fields, many other asset classes like real estate, even fixed income, bonds, people do a lot of calculations. You can form your portfolio a certain way, and there's ways to quantify risk and your risk-adjusted returns and so forth. But when I first started investing in the venture space, like I said, almost 15 years ago, the people were making just sort of your Shark Tank type investments, just sitting around the table, and very qualitative view of the world. And I always thought, my background's in decision theory, so I always thought there should be better ways to sort of analyze the situation here and how could we make better decisions. And that's where that math trumps heuristics came from, is that, you know, we could also in venture, we can sit down and start analyzing the decision parameters that we're looking at, even at the earlier stages of a company, of an idea, and start thinking about the attributes that make a company successful, and maybe come up with some sort of a scoring algorithm. Of course, from there, just like anything else, it gets more and more complicated. You start building matrices, you start building decision models and so forth. And that's something we still do today, and was sort of the beginning days of how we started investing. And so healthcare is no different. Really, you have different attributes to look at. You know, the size of the market. You know, if it's a drug, Alzheimer's impacts more people. Rare diseases are fewer people. And so there's definitely math involved in terms of what you put in to develop that drug and what comes out. And unfortunately, the efforts are becoming more and more expensive. And in the meantime, there's more and more pressure in terms of getting these costs sort of reimbursed. And of course, as we all know, here in the United States, we pay a lot more for the same medicine than perhaps some of the other countries in the world. And that's essentially, in a way, us sort of funding really the research that goes behind the scenes. But for an investor, you know, these calculations must be made. You know, for me, just a really broad view of the overall healthcare life sciences market. If we look at it, we don't have $1 trillion company there yet. I think Lilly is the closest one. And what happened in tech, I think, is going to happen in life sciences, where we're going to have one company that hits $1 trillion in valuation, and then the others will start following. And you know, interestingly, these numbers could only go one way, and that's sort of upwards. Here in the U.S., now we really don't have as big of a liquidity problem as we had in the 2000s, the 90s, 80s, 70s, which caused crashes. So the Fed doesn't want the markets to crash because of lack of liquidity anymore, which is why they pumped all that liquidity into the market after 2007, 2008. So if a crash is going to happen, it's not going to be because of the liquidity. So that means that the markets today would go in positive direction, all things being positive. You know, geopolitical events, COVID, those are negative things. And so the total investable assets in the world, everything in the world combined, is about $1.6, $1.7 quadrillion. And this is everything from real estate to even human capital. The stock markets here in the United States is only, I think, about $60 trillion, maybe more. And so that's a very, very small portion. So when you look at it, you have companies, and in the US, we have very high value add companies in technology and biotechnology. And these are very high value add companies. We don't care about making towels or, you know, curtains and things like that. Those are low value add. Those are being manufactured in China. But here, even the companies that drive the innovation, that drive all the products that we use, from this, you know, meeting system, this software system, our phones and everything else, all of that market value is still very, very little comparison to the entire investable asset size in the world. So that tells us that this is because of two reasons. Number one, the risk attribute is much higher when it's linked to publicly traded assets. What that means is it's volatile. So when it's volatile, moving 2% up one day, 3% down the other day, people sort of don't like that. And that's why they don't put a lot of money in it. And number two, just the overall trust in the general public market system. Fortunately, that trust level is highest towards the US public markets. And that's why NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange combined is massive in comparison to the London Stock Exchange or any other European stock exchanges in the world. And so if we can maintain that level of trust and keep volatility low, just by the virtue of so much money is made available outside, after 2008, these markets should continue their upwards trends. And with that, now we add quantum computing, now we add robotics, now we add artificial intelligence, now we have innovation coming out of not tech, put tech aside for a little while, but biotech and healthcare. So all of a sudden, what we should see is that life science companies, one of them, probably Lilly, would hit $1 trillion. And once that happens, then they will continue towards 2 trillion. I mean, who knew, Apple would be $1 trillion company. But when that happened, it just went on from there. And that's kind of how things move. And we could be in a very good bull run on the both public and the private side of things as far as life science are concerned. That's my long-term optimistic point of view.
I like that. So Divya, in that world, the investments you're making, where do you see?
Can I just make a remark
Yeah.
on Matt's remark, which is, I think the thing is that the demand is there, right? People are aging, there's a lot of factors involved. A moneyed class is aging. There's a lot of money being put in regardless of losses, right?
Yeah, that's true. You weren't here and we were talking about longevity. I said, listen, anything has longevity. This conference has longevity. I've known Marty for quite some time. And
we are pitching a longevity panel for next time.
Just want to remark that my mother lived 102 years old. So
yeah,
we'll be doing these for another 40 years.
Yeah, I think we will, and I hope we will, but yeah, you're right. I mean, the aging is happening, all these things are happening. And so it's just, I'm very hopeful for all these, somebody said the other day, you have to make sure that you live healthy for another like 5 years and 6, 8 years. And if you do that, then you'll live for attack another like 20 to 25 years. I saw another sign on 101. I don't know if it's still there. It says, kids who are born today will live for at least 110 years or 120 years or something like that. So they'll live for a long time.
Right. And hopefully there's health span that goes along with
And
that
health span,
lifespan,
yeah,
exactly.
and the mind span.
Yes, absolutely. And so, Divya, in that context, how do you help companies get there and, get from bench to bedside, and then not just bench to bedside, let's call it bench to bedside to exit liquidity, value for the creators and value for the consumers?
So first, I would say I agree with Matt. It's a growing market. And again, agree with Marty's comments. It's an aging population.
Yeah.
CMS is predicting about 2030, we will be spending $6.7 trillion on healthcare. So a lot is happening. So while we start looking at how do we bring products to market, one of the key things is actually 2 key things. First is, how is this product integrating into the life cycle, right? If it's, let's say, just a therapeutic, how is this helping the patient? Is there something in there already? And when is it launching? Because life cycles of getting a product from bench to bedside are long in healthcare. We are trying to make them shorter, but they're still longer compared to a software company. They can be up like Perplexity. 2020, nobody knew what it was. Today, it's like big, right?
Absolutely.
That doesn't happen in healthcare. It's a long road. So we have to understand what markets they're launching into and how they will launch into. So kind of work it backwards. And I think this is the age of ecosystems, right? It's not just a product by itself. How is this partnering? What are the strategic partnerships they have in place? How are they planning to launch this? And what is the patient population? And how is that patient population growing to grow by the time you're ready to launch? Because that might be 6 to 10 years from the time you started, right? How is that going to look like? How is this market going to look like? And kind of work it backwards. I always say, this is my favorite phrase, right? When you're starting to go someplace in GPS, you put the address first, right? You don't say, I'm going to take any road and see if it lands where I want to go.
Like that.
You have to put the address first, and then you decide which route that takes you to the address. And you may have your priority and criteria. Is it the fastest, no toll, whatever? And I think that's how we need to look at bringing products to market in healthcare. Where do you want to launch? How do you want to launch? And then look backwards and see how you can make it.
Right. Well, and that your GPS destination is, very much a North Star, because if there's a roadblock, you go a different way. If you end up taking a detour, you you reroute, but you're still heading toward that, right?
We have a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
Can we move to questions from the audience?
Yeah, I would love, yeah, absolutely.
On schedule?
Yeah.
My question is directed towards your field is very important to me. Biotech gene therapy, rare disease space. But I wanted to understand if people will be really excited if Lilly gets $1 trillion, right? And the other big pharmas follow.
Psychologically, at least, as Matt's saying, it really helps. Yeah.
How does, like, we're talking, it's a healthcare session, how does unmet need fit into that?
Dave, can you repeat the question so the audience online can hear it?
Yeah. And so ask the question is, when it comes to the growth that we're talking about, that first $1 trillion company, how does unmet need help to define how we get there? Help.
Looking to improve lives, longevity. There's a lot of people whose lives are cut prematurely, or they don't live to be 2 years, 5 years. Collectively, rare diseases are not rare.
Yeah, good point. So rare disease is not rare, and
I think if I'm understanding correctly, you're asking whether or not there's enough progress to support that $1 trillion valuation. Is that kind of
Does unmet need ever run into the equation at all?
unmet need? Like how would you define unmet need?
For treating, say, rare diseases.
So I have a comment on that.
Yeah, if you've heard that, Divya, yeah.
The thing is, and I agree with you, I've worked in rare disease. It is not rare. You have so many different kind of rare diseases, more than 10,000 that we actually have associations for right now. There is a lot happening there in that space, but it's extremely expensive to do clinical trials in that space. You're not going to hit your $1 trillion with unmet need as your North Star, because that's not going to happen, especially with rare diseases. And this is just a number that was a little bit older, but to recruit a patient in oncology takes $36,000. To recruit a patient for rare disease takes $76,000. It's super expensive.
I beg to differ with all due respect, just from our experience, having 17 programs in INDs. Classically a big pharma model, yes, those numbers, but this is what we need to do is something different.
I think I think maybe let's look at this. Let's look at this. Since we're all in Silicon Valley, let's look at this how people in Silicon Valley look at problems. When Steve Jobs came out and told us about the iPhone didn't have a camera, it didn't have copy paste, it had a lot of unmet needs. If we don't look at it that way here, we look at it kind of in a very optimistic, risk-taking view. I'm a tech investor. I don't have an MD, PhD. I grew up in a medical family. My father was a surgeon, my mother pharmacist, and so I grew up listening to all the stories. But I bring a different view to that problem, which is being more optimistic. So when you review your year-end account statement with your wealth advisor and so forth, and you might want to ask him what your exposure to life sciences is, and a decision that you make there, whether it's increase it or decrease it, will sort of proliferate to the general overall market, and it'll cause more resources to go towards healthcare. I feel like healthcare has always been, oh yeah, but it didn't work. A lot of things in tech didn't work. A lot of things in tech doesn't work today, but yet you have companies in the $1 trillion of valuation. I think it's time to, now that everybody here in this conference is almost stop using the term JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, and they start calling it the Health Tech Conference. So if that's the direction that we're going to take, then we can take more risks, and the results. I don't know if the results are going to fall, to be honest with you. I don't know. The MD PhDs don't know. Hundreds of smartest people out in Stanford, MIT, Harvard, they don't know.
We have time for one last question. succinct. Okay. Karen has a question. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, maybe the companies that are large in healthcare aren't going to be the ones who get across $1 trillion. So maybe it'll be a brand new company like the Google of healthcare or something like that.
Comment on it?
Yes,
quickly?
last comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like I understand your question, and I apologize if it's not a perfect answer, but we get a lot of pull from the economics of people trying to get patients access to an FDA-approved drug so they can get it earlier or more people can get it. We get pull from insurance providers because cost of care goes down, or large reference labs who want to do things faster or maybe with higher sensitivity. And we're working with a colleague right now that we respect immensely, and he's made the observation that there's a large number of cancer patients in the world that receive suboptimal care, and he doesn't quite know how to drive innovation to solve that one problem because it's not tied to the 3 other ones I just described. And I think it's a real issue, and I think someone's got to figure it out, and whoever figures it out will make $1 trillion.
Awesome. Well, this is lots of opportunity, it sounds like, for someone to get there. So Chris, Matt, Divya, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you all. And Marty, thanks again.